Warning: any techniques or actions seen in this video are purely for entertainment purposes. None of the speakers on camera are acting in an official instructional capacity. Do not try this at home. And all that other legal bullshit.
Okay, today's lecture is going to be the 5 Orders of Combat by Anarchy. That's me. Okay, so let's get a quick overview of what this lecture is going to be. Okay, the 5 Orders of Combat describes 3 basic principles that covers all possible tools that can be used in combat or violence. Violence being they're not fighting back or you're not fighting back. Okay, what these tools are and how they work in relation to your body. How to train to use these tools in an effective and efficient manner. The order in which you should deploy these tools in an active combat or violent scenario. Okay, so let's go over the first order. This is going to be using your body as a weapon or hand-to-hand combat. Okay, this includes all forms of unarmed combat systems that include striking and grappling. Okay, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, boxing, Muay Thai, Judo, etc., Tai Chi, not really fighting, Capoeira, all of that stuff. Okay, unfortunately, this is not useful or effective as a primary form of combat. We have weapons now that are very advanced, very easy to use. We have had weapons our entire existence. Monkeys figured out how to use weapons before we even existed. So, if you think your boxing and MMA skills is going to protect you against somebody using any of the other orders that are more advanced on this chart, you're fooling yourself. And you're putting yourself and your family in danger. Okay. However, though, there are 3 very useful things that hand-to-hand combat training is good for. It's good for physical fitness, mental fitness, getting you used to fighting, getting you used to the intensity and thinking at high speeds. And it's the most important part is body use efficiency. Remember that term because it's going to come back in a second. Okay. One effective use it does have, however, is for less lethal and friendly fire, right? To tie these two together, if your uncle attacks you at a family reunion, you probably don't want to shoot him or stab him, right? But at the same time, you don't want to just stand there and get your ass whooped either. So, you use some BJJ, grab him. If you have to knock him out, you have to knock him out. Again, it can cause a lot of damage, but it's much, much better than putting a hole in his chest. Okay, let's get into the second order. This is going to be using an extension of your body as a weapon. This includes blunt, edged, pointed, strand, and constriction weapons. These 3 are pretty straightforward, but strand weapons would be like a shoestring or a rope. You can choke people with it, you can trip them with it, you can tie them up with it. And constriction weapons would be things like throwing a sheet over somebody, or if you have a big net and you put them in the net and you're physically using your body to control that net versus like a later order weapon like a net that's a booby trap. That's what that would qualify under as a constriction weapon, or smothering somebody with a pillow. Oh boy. Okay. These are not ideally effective as a primary form of combat because, again, we've got guns, we've got, better weapons than these available, but this is absolutely extremely useful due to abundance. Okay, if you look at these 5 types of weapons I just described, pretty much anywhere in the world with the exception of the ocean and deserts, you will find one of these any direction you look. There's blunt objects all over this room, even on the limited screen you can see right now. You can use this as to beat people, or tear this off and use it as a constriction weapon. I can poke people in the eye with my glasses, use the chair right here, whatever, right? They're all over the place. So being skilled in using an extension of your body in a melee fashion is an extremely useful skill. There's weapons like that everywhere. Okay, now while these weapons are applied in a wide variety of ways that can be weapon specific, training in any of these weapons increases your ability to have fine control over an object by channeling your body into it. Another test question right here. Remember this for later on in the lecture. Okay, let's get into the third order. This is going to be releasing an extension of your body, or basically throwing something. or pushing something. So this order includes any object that can be moved by force that originates from the human body, which creates a wide range of applications. There's grenades, there's ninja stars, there's bricks, there's throwing spears. There's so many other things you can throw and push, too many to list. Oh boy. Okay. These weapons are extremely effective to scale, but their usefulness is limited by supply. Okay, now extremely effective to scale, what does that mean? If you're in a fist fight with somebody and you grab a brick or a pile of bricks and start throwing it at them, that's very effective, right? You hit them in the head, in the brain area, they're probably going to get knocked out or, have their skull fractured. Very effective. But if they pull out a gun and you have nothing but bricks, well, not very effective. But if we scale it, right, a gun is a very advanced level of a projectile weapon. If we were to use an advanced Order 3 weapon like a hand grenade or a Molotov cocktail, that can be extremely effective against the gun. You can use the hand grenade to get behind their cover. You can use a Molotov cocktail to destroy their cover or force them out of a building, which opens up your opportunity to attack them with your own projectile weapons. So again, when scaled to the technology level of, an Order 4 weapon or other weapons available, these are extremely effective. But again, while you could stuff 1,000 rounds of ammunition into a duffel bag or a backpack and carry it on you, you're not going to be able to carry 1,000 grenades or 1,000 Molotov cocktails. You're going to be limited to about 20, 25, 30, maybe 50. And in a prolonged engagement, that's not very much. Regardless of application, this order teaches and requires proper distance gauging and target tracking. Another test question here, right? In order to use anything I described, throwing axe, right, grenades, especially explosives, you need to be able to gauge the distance and know how much energy to channel into that weapon. And of course, you have to be able to track your targets. They're going to be moving, or even if you're, planning to throw the grenade here and they move, 2 feet closer, it's different, or they move higher or lower elevation, right? You have to be able to adjust to that in real time. Very important skill. Okay, that brings us to the 4th order of combat. Getting real sick of this. Okay, and this is going to be wielding an extension of your body that releases extensions of itself. Okay, if you have a bow and arrow, right, you put the arrow in there and you pull the bow back, you're wielding the bow, but when you release that string, the bow is channeling its potential energy into that arrow. Or same thing with the gun, right? You're holding the gun, you're aiming the gun, you're controlling the weapon. That's the extension of your body, but that gun is launching the bullet with its mechanisms. Okay, this includes any man-operated projectile weapon, and while penetration, concussion, and explosive are primary uses, bullets, wooden or those foam riot pellets that they use, that the cops will use, and then of course you've got explosives, rocket launchers, missile launchers, etc. It can also include other applications, such as a stun gun, pepper spray, flamethrowers, all that. Now, this is extremely effective and useful as primary forms of combat, right? This is where our modern technology has led us to. Guns allow you to engage people from much further distances than throwing weapons or melee weapons or hand-to-hand combat. It's much easier to carry more ammunition for this, so engaging multiple targets at the same time, much easier to do. Just overall superior with modern technology. Okay. And again, right here, modern weapons virtually level the physical playing field, making combat a game of training and numbers. And that's going to come up later on in the slide. Okay, now let's talk about Order 0 right here. Okay, this is a unique order, but this kind of ties the whole circle together. So this is what I call remote weapons. These are weapons that remove your body from the equation, right? First order, using your body as a weapon. Second order, using an extension of your body. Third order, releasing an extension. Fourth order, wielding an extension that releases extensions of itself. But this order removes you from the equation completely. Your body is not even part of the equation. Okay, modern technology has greatly expanded the application of these weapons, but traditionally these weapons are trap-like in nature. Poison, landmines, tripwire traps, you know, the anvil falling and all of that. But of course, with modern technology, we have drones. Depending on the application, you could count tanks or armored vehicles, right? If your opponents only have small arms or rocks, the tank is going to 100% protect you from their attempts to take you out. We have ICBMs, we have Tomahawk missiles, we have all of these crazy contraptions where we can launch the weapon or deploy the weapon into the area of combat while we're completely removed and safe. Okay. Now, one drawback is lack of direct control can impact the effectiveness of these weapons, right? Even if you have a sniper rifle, right, and you shoot your target, you can see that you got them through the scope. Where if you were to leave poison or a booby trap and it goes off, you have no real way of verifying whether you got them or not. You can, but it's much more difficult. Same thing with the drone strike with a camera that's thousands of feet in the air. Very hard to verify that you got what you aimed at versus being on the ground and shooting them or stabbing them, etc., etc. But of course, these are the most useful weapons due to the safety they afford the user. While this small drop-off in precision can be a little bit of a problem, it's much better to not even put your body in danger in the first place. Okay, now one particular weapon in this order does tie the circle together, and that's using other people. Hitman, teammates, etc. But where this really ties it in is police. Right, so if we look at the circle as a whole, whenever you are deploying these orders or using them, you always want to start at order 0. If you're highly trained, Navy SEAL, multiple medals in throwing knives, you're won multiple medals with swords and axes, and of course you've got multiple black belts, you still want to call the police. All right, you want them to go out, you want them to handle it, you want them to put themselves in harm's way, them to spend their ammo, them to absorb the ammo of your opponent. So if you have to fight afterwards, it makes this easier, right? But you still want to remove your body from the equation, regardless of how good at fighting you are. And of course, if you're untrained and or disabled, you have no choice but to use order 0. You have no choice but to call the police. You have no choice but to have, somebody else fight on your behalf, or, you have no choice but to use poison or, tripwire traps or landmines, whatever, right? You cannot effectively deploy any of these 4 orders. So this order 0 is your only option. So again, no matter how good you are at any of these other orders, you always start at order 0 whenever possible. Okay, let's talk about how we want to deploy these orders in a combat scenario. Okay, you want to deploy them in a counterclockwise function, right? Again, you always want to start at this order 0. You can get people to help you, or you can deal with the threat in a way that does not put your body in danger. You do that first. If that's not available, you start with a gun. You don't want to hear a bump in the night and go downstairs with your baseball bat and then see 3 people with guns and say, oh, time out. Let me go back upstairs and get my AR. No, it's too late at that point. You want to go downstairs with the AR, and once you've assessed the threat to be less than needing to shoot them, you work your way back. Now, unfortunately, legally, that's not exactly how it's supposed to work. You're only supposed to draw a weapon when it's absolutely necessary, and that is an unfortunate reality because that is opposite of tactical reality, right? Whenever you pull a gun out, you can always put it back away. You don't have to shoot people when you pull your gun out. So unfortunately, the law and reality are at odds on that one, and that's for you to decide on what you want to do. Me personally, I'd rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6, but that's a decision you have to make. But from a tactical standpoint, you want to have your gun first or these higher order weapons first, and then as the situation is, not necessary, as it's not necessary to use these, you back off. Okay. So again, this is just going to reiterate it, right? If I'm engaging the target, always bring your A game, right? This is real life, not an anime. You don't want to start at, your D game and then later on, decide you want to escalate, right? It may be too late if your opponents are already brought their A game. So you always bring your A game, and if you decide to de-escalate from there, you can do that. Right, again, right, we get back into de-escalation right here. Prepare for the worst, work towards the best. Same thing here, right? Make sure you've got your team, your best weapons with you. And again, if you can talk people down, or, you know, maybe it's just a fist fight and you can restrain them, that's what you want to do, but you always want to be ready. Okay, now let's talk about training the orders. Okay, now this you want to do in a clockwise fashion. While you do want to train all of these orders at the same time, you know, this one right here requires more training than firearms, right? The skill entry level for firearms is much lower. So again, you want to train all of them at the same time, but if you had to focus early on, you want to focus here, and I'll explain why. Okay, because with this first order right here, right, let's go have some review, right? Body use efficiency, right? Being able to use your body in an efficient manner, right? That is going to help you with literally every other form of combat, right? Being able to use your body efficiently helps you with the shootout, helps you with throwing things, helps you with, you know, wielding an extension of your body, right? It helps with stamina, mental training. All of that applies to these things, right? That what you learn in this first order, especially with using an extension of your body, right? This will give you halfway proficiency. Right, I have personal anecdote of this to where, you know, I've sparred with the fencing club people. These are people who have specifically trained with edged weapons, and I was able to hold my own with them sparring on my first day because I was able to translate my body use efficiency into an extension of my body, which is a sword, and I was able to use that to keep up with it. Okay, then we get into the second order, right? What did I say? Find control of an object. Super important in these two, right? Very important for aiming a gun and training the aiming and getting back on target and just having very fine control of making that gun do precisely what you want it to do. And of course, this is an absolute must for throwing weapons. If you have no fine control over a weapon and you try to, you know, a rock, let's say you try to throw it, you're going to miss by multiple feet. You're going to overthrow it, you're going to underthrow it, you're going to have bad form technique, you're going to hurt your shoulder, just, it's going to be terrible, right? And this gets you to halfway knowledgeable, right? Again, if you're going to throw a weapon, there's a lot of things you need to know about it. You need to know how much it weighs, you need to know how the weight is balanced, all of that. Well, if you're familiar swinging it around, you're going to have all that knowledge already. You're going to be familiar with the weight, you're going to be familiar with the balance of the weapon, you're going to have a feel swinging it around of when you can release that weapon. So you're going to have half the knowledge you need when it comes to throwing it. Obviously, you still need to know throwing technique, you know, underhand, overhand, there's so many other things. But again, you're going to have half the knowledge you need about that weapon. Okay, and we get into throwing weapons, right? Going back to the quiz questions, distance gauging and target tracking. Absolute must for using firearms. I mean, right? This will get you halfway familiar with it, right? Again, a firearm, there's aiming, there's trigger pull, there's a lot of specific skills you need, sighting a scope, but being able to gauge the distance, especially with sighting a scope, right? To be able to see an object and know that's about yay far, right? X meters away is going to help you, you know, line up your sights or, you know, compensate for drop off. All of that is going to be familiar to you. And of course, you know, distance gauging and target tracking does help, you know, a little bit with these other orders too. The distance here is much different, much closer, but again, right, the hand-eye coordination helps all across the board. Okay, and then we get into order 4, right? This converts combat into numbers with modern technology. This is an important point. And what this does is this helps order 0, right? What this does is, since you don't have to be big or strong to use a gun, the threshold to be an effective teammate is much lower, right? When we talk about, you know, being able to fight or being able to use an extension of your body or even being able to throw heavier weapons, athleticism counts a lot, right? You know, if you have a team full of these people, you don't want them to just be trained. They need to be strong and fit, and just genetics are going to help, and you're going to want them to be male. But this order right here with modern technology, like lightweight handheld repeating firearms that weigh less than 10 pounds, This opens the gate for sometimes teenagers, women, pretty much anybody who is trained can be one of these numbers. So it makes building a team of effective fighters much easier when you're using this fourth order. And of course, if your opponent has you beat at order 0, they outnumber you. Well, or again, they're out-trained in these, right? They're better fighters, they're better swordsmen, they're better at throwing things. Well, this helps level the playing field a lot. If you have to fight multiple attackers, you want a projectile weapon. You want a gun, or even pepper spray is good. Even though the effectiveness of pepper spray is variable, you can hit multiple targets with it, right? It's better than, say, a knife, where if they all rush you at the same time, grabbing your knife hand and stripping you of it is going to be much easier than trying to avoid getting pepper sprayed as a group or avoid getting shot as a group. So this helps you eliminate and mitigate having inferior numbers. Okay, now let's talk about this very unique order, order 0 right here. There are 2 applications you can use this as. The first one we're going to talk about how to use it as a weapon. Okay, one huge advantage is it requires little to no combat training. Notice the key word here is combat training, right? If you're using a poison, obviously you need to be very knowledgeable of it. You need to know how to handle it effectively, how to get it, the proper dosages, odor, taste, smell, all of these things, right? But you don't need combat training. You don't need to have a live sparring partner when you poison their drink, and right? You don't need to be in a high pressure environment. You just need to have a lot of general knowledge, or same thing with making explosives or setting explosives. There's a lot of knowledge you need to have, but you don't need to test it. You don't need to do it in live training and live sparring against an opponent who's giving you who's fighting back. These are meant to be weapons you catch people by surprise with. Or again, if you're hiring a hitman, they do all the combat training for you. Okay. Now, how this interacts with all the other orders, with these green arrows, is that you don't have to use them, right? If you're using order 0 weapon, you don't have to put your body in harm's way at all, right? And this helps you preserve these orders, because even in a combat where you take no damage, you're still putting wear and tear on your body, which affects your ability to use these weapons, and you're not putting that wear and tear on your body. So you don't even have to break a sweat. Okay, now let's talk about using it as teammates. Okay, when you use it as teammates, then you get this symbiotic relationship between all the orders. Obviously, having more people, if you're going to beat somebody up, having 5 people to beat them up instead of just you makes this more effective, and so on and so forth. Having 5 people with baseball bats, 5 people throwing bricks, 5 people with guns, right? All of these things work far more effectively with a team, right? And then the interaction on the other side is training these orders, right? Having a team that is trained in all of these orders, right, makes this team more effective. So it's a back and forth symbiotic relationship. Okay, so let's go over review and takeaways. There's really just 2 quick points on this one. Okay, the first one is you should train all aspects of combat as the orders synergize with each other. Right, just got explained, just got done explaining that, right? Training hand-to-hand combat makes your body use efficiency better for every other weapon you can use. Being good, having good fine control over an object makes you a better shooter, makes you better at throwing, makes you better at everything, right? They synergize with each other. So you should train all of them. Don't just get a gun and be fat and out of shape and, depend on that gun, and then, oh no, I'm fighting somebody I don't want to shoot. What do you do now? Okay, and then of course the last one is always take the easiest path to victory. A lot of people don't agree with this and think you should be macho and fight with honor. And the reality is that an alive coward can affect their environment way better than a dead hero. Okay, it is better for you to win in a cowardly manner and survive to take care of your friends and family and community than to die a hero and let the living cowards control your friends and family and community, right? You want to be alive to help protect, to continue to protect them instead of leaving them to the fate of others. And that is all. Get out there and go train.